Huawei is back with a new phone that combines bulletproof battery life, new Oreo-based software, and an AI-enhanced camera. I'm Alex with Android Central, and it's time to review the Huawei Mate 10 Pro. If you followed the Huawei Mate series in the past, you might be expecting a giant, barely manageable slab of a phone. Despite some fairly trim bezels, last year's Huawei Mate 9 was still all but impossible to wrangle with one hand. Now, that phone does kind of exist still in the form of the regular Huawei Mate 10, but we're reviewing the Mate 10 Pro here, which is the only model coming to the US and most of Western Europe. We'll tackle the standard Mate 10 in a future video, but the short version is you get slightly lower specs than the Pro, no water resistance, a bigger screen area, and a headphone jack. It's also supremely slippery on account of the larger footprint and lack of chamfers on the body. Anyway, back to the Mate 10 Pro. With its 6-inch 18:9 screen and minimal bezels, this model just feels like a big phone in the hand, as opposed to a colossus like the Mate 9. The design of the Mate 10 Pro is beautiful. It's Huawei's best looking handset yet by a country mile. I've been using the mocha brown variant, which flickers between a maroon brown and a rose gold colour depending on the light, complementing the brushed gold colour of the metal frame. In a change from the Mate 9 Pro, the display is now completely flat, which means it lacks the front to back symmetry of the older device, but I'm fine with that. The back panel, now fashioned out of Gorilla Glass 5, retains the same gentle curve as before, which helps with the ergonomics. And there's a unique stripe pattern around the camera module that adds flair to what otherwise could have been an unexceptional metal and glass chassis, right below that sensibly located fingerprint scanner. The back of the Mate 10 Pro is inevitably going to pick up scratches, but that's hardly a unique complaint. Same deal with the overall slickness of this phone. There's an oleophobic coating on the back now, which means it's not as much of a fingerprint magnet as other glass handsets, but this also makes it a bit more slippery in the hand. Around the front, that 6-inch display is impressive, even with a slightly lower resolution than other flagships. It's Full HD+, which is basically 1080p and change. It's an AMOLED panel with all the punchy colours, excellent daylight visibility and pitch blacks that we expect from that. And, since it's a big focus elsewhere in the smartphone world right now, no, I haven't noticed any significant screen burn-in in my couple of weeks of testing. That's not unusual, but it is worth saying. The innards of the Mate 10 Pro are packed with the very latest silicon from Huawei, the Kirin 970 CPU based on an efficient 10nm process, and the first to feature Huawei's new AI hardware, the Neural Processing Unit. More on that later. You also get 6GB of RAM and 128GB of storage, plus dual SIM support in the model I've been using. And powering all that is a ginormous 4000 mAh battery, a staple Mate series feature and about the biggest capacity you'll find in any high-end phone. Battery life then is predictably awesome, good enough to take you from an early start through an entire day exploring the city and still have enough juice left over in the evening for some night photography. A busy day out in London took me to the 35% mark by sundown, at a point where, based on my usage, most other phones would be thoroughly dead. Huawei's supercharge technology makes up for the lack of wireless charging here with some of the fastest charging speeds I've seen, up to 5 amps at 4.5 volts for quicker, cooler refills. Supercharge hasn't changed at all since the days of the Mate 9, but as a side note, it's funny how the phone shows you your battery percentage to 1 decimal place now when you plug it in, so you can literally watch the numbers tick up when you're supercharging. And the whole thing is also water resistant, rated IP67, so no worries about using it out and about in the rain or dropping it in the toilet. That's basically table stakes now for a high-end phone. At the same time, unfortunately you'll need to dongle up or go wireless for your audio needs, as there's no 3.5mm jack. Huawei has talked up its dual camera capabilities ever since it teamed up with Leica 18 months ago. The results on phones like the P10 and Mate 9 have been decent, but rarely spectacular, until now. The Mate 10 Pro's rear cameras finally hit that tip-top flagship level, the point where it can legitimately match competitors like the Galaxy Note 8 and Google Pixel 2. This is a dual lens setup with f1.6 apertures, you get a 12MP RGB sensor with OIS, optical stabilization, and a 20MP black and white sensor, so on paper it's a pretty familiar photographic loadout for Huawei. The RGB camera fills in the colours, the monochrome camera fills out the detail. But the improved optics and some serious post-processing advancements push the Mate 10's camera to new heights. You get the same astounding dynamic range we've seen from earlier Huawei cameras, now with more fine detail and infinitely improved low light capabilities. Speaking of which, Huawei's manual mode is a joy to use. Even without a tripod, you can coax out some clear, bright, impressive long exposures. At the launch event, Huawei made a lot of noise about the Mate 10's AI scene detection, which can tell the difference between a cat and a cupcake and a bunch of other stuff. In fact, it'll automatically identify the top 13 shooting scenarios and tweak settings accordingly, including selective saturation for things like food. It's a great showcase for the new neural processing unit and one of the few that's really easy to demo. Huawei's wide aperture mode also comes into its own on the Mate 10 Pro. This is the mode that lets you refocus shots after the fact through software magic. Both the accuracy of its edge detection and the quality of the resulting photos has improved a ton from the previous generation. But of course those f1.6 lenses mean you can get some pretty rich bokeh effects even without the need for software trickery. And you can use this mode with a dedicated monochrome camera as well. It actually works surprisingly well even at distance. That's partly thanks to the hybrid zoom mode, which uses the extra resolution of the 20 megapixel sensor to zoom in more clearly than you get from digital zoom alone. It's no substitute for a real telephoto lens, but it works better than you might expect. It's not a perfect performance from these cameras though. I've found photos from the Mate 10's selfie camera to be a little softer than other phones like the Note 8 and Pixel 2. It's not bad, it's just not the very best. And the same goes for the Mate 10's video capabilities. You get perfectly good looking 4K video most of the time, but stabilization isn't as reliable as those two phones. There's a little smudging in darker areas, and overall video's just not quite up to the level of other phones in this price bracket. So what about software? For a long time the undoing of many a Huawei flagship. Well, superficially not a lot has changed. EMUI 8 still looks a lot like the older version 5. The basic design language is the same, even though it's now based on Android 8.0 Oreo, which is great to see by the way. Case in point, you have clean modern settings icons like this right next to app icons that look like they're from a mid-2000s Windows XP theme. And although you can apply an endless number of themes, there's nothing in Huawei's theme store that looks as sharp as the latest designs from Google and Samsung. There are also some feature decisions that seem needlessly different, like the fact that the lock screen only shows you notifications since you last locked your phone. And UI scaling also seems a little off in places, regardless of how you adjust this setting. And although Google Feed support in the launcher is nice, the transition is far from seamless. We're getting a bit nitpicky here, but with good reason. This is an expensive phone, and the software design is the main area where it's outdone by most of its competition. Still, EMUI 8 does have some genuinely useful features that I wish were part of stock Android. The one-handed mode is quick and easy to activate, incoming messages give you the option to use split screen mode if you're watching full screen video, and it should go without saying, but with Oreo, a cutting-edge CPU and 6GB of RAM, the Mate 10 Pro absolutely flies through anything that you'd want to do on a smartphone. Artificial intelligence is the big, shiny marketing message for the Mate 10 series, but right now it's almost impossible to showcase the phone's AI hardware outside of a couple of preloaded apps. Microsoft's Translator is the main one alongside the stock camera app. Huawei also says it's using the NPU in its machine learning based performance tuning, which should help the Mate 10 Pro keep more of its responsiveness over time. That's fine, nothing wrong with that, but for the moment, for almost everyone, it's kind of a sideshow. AI and the neural processing unit is about future-proofing the Mate 10 for all the apps coming in the new year with AI features. That's a good thing, but it's mainly future stuff. What makes the Mate 10 Pro a good buy today is being really good at the core smartphone experience. Things like getting to the end of the day on a single charge no matter what you're doing, and taking excellent photos even in challenging nighttime conditions. That's not as exciting and futuristic as NPUs and AI, but it's far more meaningful to most people who use this phone. So get the Mate 10 Pro if you want a beautiful high-end phone with extra long battery life and one of the best creative cameras, and if you can deal with software that's occasionally a little unconventional looking. Now, software weirdness being the main negative in a Huawei phone review is nothing new, but EMUI's quirks are far from the Achilles heel they used to be. The Mate 10 Pro is one of the best phones of 2017, and a worthy alternative to that Note 8 or Pixel 2 XL you might have been thinking about. That's going to wrap it up for now. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss more reviews from us as they land, and head to androidcentral.com for more Mate 10 coverage. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.